To block this call and all future calls, press 7. To reject this call, hang up now. You may begin speaking now.
Hello and welcome to Convict Inc. I'm your host, Robert Rosso. It is Sunday, October the 27th. Back in 2015, a guy by the name of Freddie Gray made national news in Baltimore for getting what's called the rough ride and ended up dying in police custody. Most of you who follow the news might remember this. What happened? 6 officers ultimately were arrested in this case, went on trial, and all of them were found not guilty. Now, what ends up happening there, this is during the Obama administration, something happened, what was called the consent decree. That is, the Department of Justice ends up going into the city of Baltimore and kind of, taking over. There was a prosecutor, Marilyn Mosby, I think her name was. She was an Obama homegirl. Ultimately, went down on some corruption charges. I think, I'm not really sure of what it was. You guys can do research if it matters on that. I want to say now that when I get out, there will be way more in depth on this. I have to, first of all, watch the movie that's behind this, and then you're going to hear recordings from the guy that I'm talking about today. You will hear him speak in his own words. The guy's name is Daniel Hersl. Okay, so anyway, this guy Daniel Hersl is currently in custody with me at the Federal Medical Center in Butner. Has stage 4 prostate cancer and is doing very bad. I will say here that my 3 closest friends that I hang around with right now, one of them is doing a life sentence, one of them is doing 177 years, and the other one's doing a life sentence. Now, they do not talk to this guy. One of them is not really thrilled that I'm even giving this guy the time of day. And the way I explained it to him, and we'll stick to it, you guys who have been following me right now know that I'm my own person. I've done things in custody that wouldn't really, people would frown upon, and I do things on the street where I just don't give a fuck, and I will put my fingers up in the air and say what I've got to say. Whether that's good, bad, indifferent, whatever, you can't accuse me of not being my own person. Well, the same goes for in here. And the way I explained it to my friends and the one that didn't like it is, even though I'm in custody and technically I will be totally done 90 days from today. That is, if I did not go to halfway house, nothing else, from today, I am exactly 89 and a wake up from being done with my federal prison sentence and totally off probation and parole. So, what I consider myself, the way it is, even though I'm in custody, I am wearing a civilian hat. I no longer have the mentality of a person who is locked up, convict, if you will, although there will be some that say that I have that mentality on the street. But whatever. I can see the forest through the trees. The one thing that I don't do is I won't stoop so low as to associate in here. That's one thing I won't do is associate with sex offenders. There's a lot of them. I'm not disrespectful as I don't just walk around cussing them out, but I don't have conversation for them. And to be honest, for most of them, I hope that they burn in hell. But anyway, let me get back to the case at hand. Daniel, he came across my radar here a couple months ago, and there's a book that was floating around here that I read about him. The book, I will say that there's a few things that made him look like a scumbag. Now, whatever you guys have to say, this is a former Baltimore police officer who was on a task force designed to go get rid of guns in Baltimore, who was a corrupt cop. And he gets busted. Their whole task force gets busted. He doesn't snitch on them. He's like, there's only 2 of them that didn't snitch. He gets 18 years, and he is paying for his crime.
This call is from a federal prison.
Him here. It was a couple months ago he came on radar. I really started talking to a friend of his, and he is in the cell, by the way, with an Alabama member of the Aryan Brotherhood of Alabama, which that's a whole different story. But as I started talking to him, I can't say he's not a nice guy. I can't. And I will say this. I hesitate to say I feel sorry for him, but when I was talking to him, he brought buddy for the last 8 years, and it was, I can't say that I didn't kind of feel sorry for him a little bit. But anyway, here's the deal. I asked him, he was a cop for 20 years. When did it all start? And he said there's two kinds of corruption. There's breaking the rules and there's breaking the law. And he's not out to talk shit or bash the Baltimore Police Department. There is a culture of corruption that runs rampant in there, and he would say that runs rampant to this day. He also said that inside the City Hall, inside the mayor's, inside the far reaches of City Hall, members of the Black Guerrilla family run that. I repeat, members of the Black Guerrilla family run politics, or have at least a hand in politics within Baltimore, says Daniel Hersl. Okay. If you guys really want to research that, there was a prominent member of the BGF, as they're known, who impregnated 3 guards inside the Baltimore jail. They were fighting over each other. I think they got arrested, but he impregnated them while in custody, I do believe. But that's a whole different thing. We'll see if he wants to get into that when I interview him when I get out. But what happened after the Freddie Gray was, during the Freddie Gray, what happens is their hands are totally tied. Police cannot do their work according to him. The whole nation was on him. They were all down on what had happened. And the morale inside the police department was at its all-time low. Guys just absolutely refused to do their job because they were afraid of doing anything. Now, the other side of that is, for so long, they've been getting away with rule breaking. And I asked him, how many cops are dirty? And he says, what do you mean dirty? Rule breakers or law breakers? And I said, well, is that one and the same? Whatever. Okay, rule breakers, over 50% easily. When you first start off and you go inside the police department, you're taught how to skirt rules. Okay, the Constitution does get in the way. Straight up. That's something, and that shouldn't be a shock. And you know what? I dealt with dirty cops before in the street, not willingly. I was put in a situation back when I was a kid in my 20s where a bondsman, I was dealing drugs with the bondsman, and they were dealing drugs with the dirty cop, and I ended up having to sell a few keys with the dirty cops who were then doing bad things with those drugs, setting people up or whatever, or just dealing drugs on their own, whatever the deal was. This is something that happens to this day. That's happening in police departments across the country. In this case, okay, where's those little notes? Okay, I'm going to call back, and I'm going to tell you what they were doing more. This is a little bit sloppy, you guys. I'm for sure, on these audios, I'm not a fan of them. I'm going to go ahead and maybe I'll do 1 or 2 more phone calls, kind of give a little bit more background on what he says, but I want you guys to hear from him, and that will happen in February, no later than March. God willing that he is not dead, because his cancer was prostate. The Bureau of Prisons did not get to him in time, and it's in his bones. Now, goodbye. Okay, all right, this is the second part. So here's the deal. At the heart of this case is a task force called the Gun Trace Task Force. They were led by a guy by the name of Sergeant Jenkins. Jenkins, like the rest of these guys, I believe there's 6 in this force, ended up going down. He was one of the first to come out ratting when they all fell. But one of the things, what they were really, their job, the primary purpose of this force was to go out and get guns, which were just all over the place and actually still are in Baltimore. But after Freddie Gray, what happened was police were stopping. They were not going out and doing their jobs. They weren't pulling people over with guns. Known criminals or known felons or whatever you want to say, they were letting slide because the public was so against them. This anti-police movement that happened, which was in part, this was all during, Freddie Gray started in Baltimore. But anyway, this anti-police movement. So they said, fuck it. These guys will go out, and they were basically what would you call jump out boys. They would get in cars, they would go to high gun areas. A lot of these guys would stand on corners and just shoot guns in the air, or guys that were high gang activity, and they would set up like, I guess, slingshots or something they called it, where one officer, they would be known, they would be in undercover cars, the guys would know who they were, and then they'd start running a certain direction, and then another one would jump out, and then they would ultimately, take these guys down and take their guns, arrest them. In a lot of cases, they did not even arrest them, they just took the guns off the street. Well, like I said, this is all about dirty cops. Well, one of the things that they did is that they put in a lot of bogus overtime. So this was taxpayer money that they were getting, and what they would do, for example, he was telling me a little while ago, on Sunday, they would call, like, let's just say Sundays is a low activity law enforcement night. I don't know how many people out there know that. If you're a criminal, Sunday's probably the great day to do it. But anyway, so on a Sunday night, the sergeant would call up and say, okay, hey, let's go out, let's go do a few jump outs, and we'll say we'll pick up these guns real quick, and then we'll say we worked for X amount of hours, and then they also got days off, I believe, for how many guns that they would get, something like that. But they were just beating the system on overtime. That's one of the things. But a lot of what they were doing, so this Jenkins, they were robbing drug dealers too. Okay, so Jenkins would go and say, okay, look, it's Friday night. Let's hit some drug dealers real quick. So they knew the big drug dealers in the area. They would follow them. They would case them, follow them. As soon as they'd come out, they'd do a traffic stop. They'd bust them on a traffic stop. They'd either take them down and interrogate them, or they would somehow, if they didn't have drugs and gun on them, which a lot of them did, and they kept, and let's say if they had like ounces on them, he said they would just throw ounces away. What their goal always was to get back inside these drug dealers' house. Now, this in a corrupt way.
This call is from a federal prison.
Some of the times they did warrants the right way, but often they didn't. And there's actually two cops in this task force. They were all burning each other, by the way. There was two of them. I forgot their names, two black dudes. They were like the biggest. They prided themselves on being the two biggest drug dealers in Baltimore, these dirty cops. Well, so what they would do is they already have warrants, like these warrants set up, and then they would use these guys, their own brothers in the task force, to do some of these stops. And he was telling me of one case just a little while ago where his sarge called him and said, hey, I need you to follow this guy. They followed him to Home Depot. Daniel, this guy here, followed him around. They said, yeah, he's looking at kitchen counters and so forth. Okay. So he follows him out of the Home Depot, gets in his car, they call him up, and they say, pull him over. Well, this guy Daniel, this dirty cop here, disgraced cop, whatever, Hersl, doesn't have a gun. Nothing. He just said, pull him over anyway. They pull him over. Well, they already had a warrant for the house. So they bring him back to the house. It's him and his girl. And they set him down. No handcuffs, no guns, no nothing. Go inside the house. They find money that's vacuum packed. $20,000 in this case. So they're going upstairs. Guys come to this guy Daniel and say, hey, let's go downstairs and watch the family. So he's downstairs talking to the suspect, the drug dealer in custody, but was not handcuffed, and was talking about his house, the renovations he was doing on his house. And they're upstairs and they're divvying up the money. And they come down, they call in the Baltimore PD, they call in the state. State comes in. I think there was drugs in the house, but they kept all the money. And as soon as the state got there, they let go. Well, on that case, I want to note something a little bit funny. The guy's girlfriend was actually a CI, and he didn't even know it. So the guy's girlfriend comes out, and she wanted her take of the money or drugs. You talk about corruption. I mean, just mass corruption. By the way, everybody out there, all the tough guys out there in the streets that are talking about this no snitch environment and all this, and you watch The Wire. I know this from federal statistics, by the way. When I was doing prison consulting, people would inquire about, well, they wouldn't come out and say straight out about ratting, but they were asking, what happens to informants? What happened in prison? How many people tell? It's a little over 7 out of 10 people will cooperate, snitch, whatever. He said a solid 8, if not 9, out of everybody that they busted. 8, if not 9, were telling them as soon as they can, as soon as they got in the car. The bigger ones had the more information to run their mouths about. He said it was hard to find old school convicts anymore. And I know that. Like I said, I know that from doing legal work in prison. But point being, if you're involved in dirt out there, watch your back, because all that and the person always. Person who's yelling the most about how this person's a snitch or that person or how they would never rat, always the biggest rat. Every single fucking time. Every time. Bar none. That for sure, the person who says that the other person's a rat is 100% a snitch. Anyway, so How they get stung is these dirty cops. I do not feel sorry for them getting in trouble. I don't. I do want to say to the people like on Fox News and the conservatives and everybody that's pro-police, and by the way, I am pro-police. 100%, we need law enforcement, okay? We do need law enforcement. But people have this mind that it's only a few bad apples. I would totally disagree, and this case proves it. There's cultures of corruptions within inside so many of these police departments, and he said it's a conservative estimate to say 50 to 55% are corrupt, rule breakers, not going so far as to breaking the law, not going so far as to planting evidence, although it happens more so than one would think. And he did say that body cameras have helped as far as tampering down corruption. So the police departments that are talking about the cameras and that are all up in arms about not wearing body cameras are the ones that are pissed off because it's harder for them to get away with planting drugs, stealing money, stealing drugs, and all that. He also said that there's a lot of the guys, when they get busted and they steal all their shit, their drugs or their guns or money, at first they were like happy, then they start getting pissed off. Then they were going to cops and then telling them how they were getting burned by other cops. A lot of these guys were CIs already, and they were pissed off because they were working for the feds or they were working for other people. They get busted by these 6 rogue officers who really were supposed to be out just tackling the gun problem, and they were busting drug dealers. They'd be all pissed because these guys were stealing their shit, and they were rats, and they felt because they were rats that they were protected. So really, really fascinating. Now I got to go into this because one of the things he asked me. I don't know how long Hersl will I don't know how long he's got left on this earth, okay? Here's what happens to this guy. Let me call back one more time, and I'll talk about the medical. I'll wrap this up with his medical issues, and I want to put it out there. I've got a note already marked. When I get out of here, within 2 weeks, I'm going to be sending different people, information because I will be doing interviews with these guys. He is right up there. And I want you guys to hear this in his own voice. By the way, on the HBO series I talked about, the cops that snitched, none of them get a dime off that show. The 2 that didn't snitch, they're all getting proceeds from that show. And he's never seen it, never read one of the books, Ned doesn't care about it. But yeah, that's kind of funny too. Call back in a minute. And this is part 3, and it's the last part of this segment. I want to say this. Excuse me. When Daniel Hersl found out about that I had a YouTube channel, and I talked to him about being on it, one of the things he said is there any way you can help people in here? Is there any way that, what are you doing? Are you just putting stories out? Is there any way that you can help with our situations, medical and otherwise? I kind of went over, what's been going on with my channel since it started and where I want to go with it and the different stuff, And anyway, one of the things that I wanted to put out there was about his medical. And here's what happened. And I don't want to lose you guys. Basically, this is what happened. He was diagnosed with cancer while he was at Springfield. By the way, that's where John Gotti was, and he had delayed care as well. And they couldn't deal with the kind of cancer he had at Springfield, okay? And he ended up filing on it. It's called a BPA. When you file a BPA, it's to the counselors, it's to the institution, then you file a BP9, which is to the warden, and then a BP10 goes to the region, and then a BP11 goes to the central office. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and try to read you the response from a BP10, which is at the region. He's complaining that he's not getting medical care, okay? And then it puts them, this is what they write to him. This is a response to Regional Administrative Appeal received on August the 22nd, 2023. By the way, the date of this is March 18th, 2024. We have reviewed the documentation related to your appeal. Based on this review, we concur with the manner with the warden addressed your concern. Me and the warden said all good was here. Everything was fine here, people. Nothing to see here. You have consistently been provided timely and appropriate medical care. A review of your electronic medical records revealed your condition has been closely monitored, treated, and managed by health services. Okay? Specifically, you are being followed by urology I'm an oncology specialist with diagnostic imaging and testing performed as indicated. On June 29, 2023, a redesignation request was placed for you to be transferred to medical services where you increased your medical care needs, where your increased medical care needs could be adequately met. Okay, so they're saying everything's fine here, but then they're saying that he has increased medical needs, okay? Most recently, you were evaluated by an oncologist in January 2024. Your recommendations to continue the current treatment, repeat PSA screenings, blah, blah, blah. Okay. He then went and had a lawyer. They got a hold of somebody from the Medical Justice Alliance who is actually Families Against Mandatory Minimum, uses these people. Bunch of medical professionals are trying to help expedite inmates' request for compassionate release. So they're reviewing medical charts and they're helping lawyers along with that, okay? All right. So this lady wrote this about Daniel. I have prepared my review for the medical care on behalf of this client's legal team. The client is not my patient. Okay, wait. I do not have the authority to receive the information. Okay. I have done so voluntarily. Based on my review of 575 pages of Daniel Hersl's medical records, I declare the following. Daniel Hersl has been diagnosed with metastatic prostate cancer. In his case, we are concerned that his diagnosis was significantly delayed 11 months, despite the fact that younger individuals are at higher risk of aggressive prostate cancer and that diagnosis can be attained quickly in the United States of America. So they're saying that you guys are dropping the ball. We are concerned that this delay eroded his trust in the medical system. We are concerned that the patient's decision to forego his prostate cancer specific treatment such as external beam radiation therapy has been due to the lack of trust. Despite treatment, this cancer will progress. We are concerned that his cancer progresses, he will no longer be able to care for himself. His bone metastasize, you know what I'm trying to say, will put him at risk if he falls in for fractures, etc. His prostate cancer will also put him at risk for urinary obstruction and sepsis for urinary tract infections. Finally, he is a young male dying from cancer, and he would benefit from palliative and hospice care, which he cannot adequately provide in his facility. Okay, this goes on to say, let's see if I can get this real quick. Mr. Hersl first presented his case in September of 2022 with an increased PSI of 8. In young male, this elevation is particularly concerning. It is reasonable to repeat this test to confirm that it truly is elevated. However, a repeat test could not be completed for 2 or 3 weeks. A repeat test could have been completed in 2 or 3 weeks, but was not for 3 months. Mr. Hersl had repeated testing in December of 22, in which the level was found to have increased to 25. This elevation alone should have prompted immediate referral to prostate.
This call is from a federal prison.
Unfortunately, his formal diagnosis of prostate cancer did not occur for 2 months until February 2023. Mr. Hersl's pathology report demonstrated high-grade prostate cancer. This pathological diagnosis in his tumor should have been addressed promptly with referral to urologist, and oncologist as soon as possible. However, Mr. Hersl received a further significant delay in care and was not able to see the urologist until May. At the appointment, Dr. Blank, I'm not going to say his name, in urology, the patient was advised he would be a candidate for robot-assisted radical prostatectomy or whatever, but would require a PET scan first. This PET scan was put off till August. Okay, I'm going to stop here because it's getting redundant. Here's the deal. This guy's has suffered gross delays in his medical treatment. I've been there with delays. My bladder cancer did metastasize, thank God. His prostate cancer did. As a result, he's got to the point to where he's just like, fuck it. Meaning that every time he gets set up to get ready for treatment, something happens and it's taking months and it spreads to another part of his body. It's in his bones right now. So he's at a spot in his life where he's like giving up. I don't know what's happening. We didn't go that far. I know that his lawyers do have have him in for compassionate release right now. So we'll see what happens. Like I said, if everything works out well, you guys will be hearing from him. Hopefully no later than the end of February. I was going to go back and ask, and I couldn't find it before I finished this, if he had anything he wanted to say to law enforcement otherwise. I do know that he feels that Baltimore is its own law enforcement in the world, meaning big city, a lot of corruption inside the city hall. It starts with City Hall, and the culture of corruption runs downhill. He has said that. That doesn't mean he said he wanted to make clear that it's not that there's not a lot of good cops, and that there's not a lot of good cops, he said, that do skirt policy and some laws. Not saying that everybody's dirty, he said, but he's saying that there are good cops that skirt policy and procedure. That's his words, not mine. I got my own issues with that, but you guys are going to hear from him at some point. I hope this medical stuff didn't get people too lost. Probably did, but whatever. Thanks for your support. Go to the top of the page. Look at the merchandise section, if you will. Buy a magnet, cup, whatever. Yeah, that's it. And hopefully this week I'll get a date on when I'm going to go to Halfway House. I actually said to my mom today, if they had me down for like 30 days or something, and then I would consider maybe just staying until January 27th again. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that works out. I have a house to get home to, and I want to get there before it falls apart or torn down. Also, I don't know if I mentioned this on here. Shout out to my cousin Claire and her boyfriend. Scratch off lottery ticket, $750,000. Scratched off one lottery ticket, $750,000. Yeah. No, it sucks, right? You're supposed to be happy for them, right? I'm just kidding. Yeah, is everybody really happy when somebody wins, by the way? Are you like, oh my God, it's so great, your cousin won, Robert? Are you like, fuck, I wish it was me? Be honest.